morning, eMbody family. I hope you, your families, and all your loved ones are staying safe, healthy, and positive during this unprecedented time that we find ourselves in. Our community, our city, our country, and our race having to live life differently than we've become accustomed to, and that requires us to change the way we do things, and of course our health and fitness, the way we work out, where we work out, all of that is affected right now. So in the theme of doing things differently, I'd like to discuss with you the concept of mobility. And you know, when I'm talking to people in the gym about mobility, often they'll come to me and tell me, I have a tightness in my body, it's over here, or it's in the back of me, I have a tightness up here. Or, you know, I feel restricted, I can't get down on the floor and then get back up. I feel like that's challenging, I'm not as mobile as I used to be. Perhaps you have a situation where you can relate to that. So often what people have been told is that that if they have these tightnesses or inabilities to move a limb a certain way or move their bodies a certain way, that things like stretching can help, or rolling on a roller, a foam roller, or rubbing it, you know, using your hand or using some other apparatus to rub it, or just moving. You know, moving can help get rid of the tightness, or the unwanted sensation, or the limitation. And when I'm talking with these people, they often have tried these things, stretching for instance, and they come back the next time I chat with them and they say, you know what, it helped for a day, and then the next day I seem to be back in the same place. I had the same sensation, or I couldn't move very well, or I was less mobile. And so, you know, the thought that these things can help in the short term, that's possible, but as a long-term strategy to creating change, it may not be the best strategy for you to employ. So I'd like to talk to you about alternatives, an alternative strategy that you can use in order to improve your mobility. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is what the body does. So the body puts restraints on your movement when it doesn't have control of it. Okay, so I'll show you some examples here, but you know, the general idea is that when I move my arm, it comes to an end, I can't move it any further. That's the body's controllable or active range of motion. Right, come up on the other side here, it's the body's controllable or active range of motion. And so the first strategy that I would suggest that you use is something that I would call working with your active range of motion. And so that would be in alignment with working with your current settings, working with your body as it is, as opposed to try to sort of force it into a different direction, like, oh no, I want you to go up there a bit, pushing it into this place to stretch. So that's the first concept, is working with your active range of motion. The second one is to, instead of pushing it or pulling it, all right, pulling it into a direction, or pushing it into a direction, or pushing it into a direction there, instead of doing that, what I'm going to say is perhaps reverse that and push the limb into the limited position. All right, so I'll show you what that looks like. So the first thing is work with your active range of motion. The second one is to, rather than try to stretch the tissue out, maybe do the opposite of that. Maybe go into the limited direction and push into it rather than away from it. And the third idea here is to use some workout strategies on them. So let's get an example here for you. So I'm going to lie down and show you my active range of motion of my hips right now, in flexion. So here's my right leg, right, I'm going to lift it up and take it up to a place where it stops, okay? My knee's nice and straight, my leg is up, you've got an angle here, okay? There's a certain distance there. On the left side, same thing, knees straight, right? And as you can see, I've got a deficit in active motion. I can't get quite as high on the left, right? Again, just to show you the right, right? There's the right, right? And here is the left, okay? Now, I feel that as an active, I feel that as a limitation, and the feeling that I get is actually in the back of my leg, right? That's interesting to the situation, because often people will say, I feel tight. So I do. I feel tight in the back of my leg when I lift my left leg up and not my right leg. So, here's my active range of motion that I can work with. Active range right here. Now, instead of pulling into this like with stretching, an alternative to that would be to push the limb into a restraint. So I'm going to use my arm, or my other arm, as a restraint here. So straight leg lifting up, right? Here's my active range, here's my restraint, and I'm actively pushing my leg into my restraint. Right, 5 seconds worth, and now I'm going to rest. Again, this is the idea of looking at mobility differently. Again, I'll come up, there's my active range of motion, place my restraint, and push into the restraint. And keep pushing into the restraint. A short period of time, about 5 seconds. What I'm trying to do here is elicit a response that may give me more mobility. Alright, here I go again. Active range. There's my restraint. Push into my restraint. 5 seconds. Release. And again, last one. There it is. Push into the restraint. And release. Okay? So there you had the two steps, working with active range of motion and pushing into rather than pulling through the limited place. I'm not trying to pull it passively, I'm trying to actively push into it. Right? Again, a different philosophy than stretching, and definitely different than rubbing and rolling. So now the idea is to sort of check and just give you an example of what happens when you push into a limited direction from a position of active range, as opposed to passively being pushed into that position and trying to work there. All right, so here's the right one that we had earlier. All right, so there it is, same sort of angle that we had earlier. Okay, and now here's the left one that was limited before, and now is similar to that of the right side. Okay, again, just showing you. All right, there's the right, and there's the left. Okay, so what will happen most of the time when you're pushing into, rather than trying to passively put yourself through, is you'll get a mobility increase. Much similar to that. I'm going to show you another example here. Okay, here's my active range of motion. On my right side going towards my left side. Here's my active range of motion on my left side going towards my right side. As you can see, I've got less active range of motion going towards the left with my right. Okay, so traditionally in the stretching realm, idea is to pull to try to passively stretch. I'm saying no, don't do that. Come here, find a restraint, use your arm, and push into the restricted position. And then release. And again, come to the active range of motion, find the restraint, and push into the active range of motion and release. And again, push into the active range of motion, release, and again, push into the active range of motion and release. Okay, so there again, you had a situation where we saw a limitation, worked with it by pushing into it, using a restraint, my hand, and now we get to look at the responses. So here's the right leg that we just, here's the left leg that we didn't work on. Alright, so there's the left in terms of its position, and now here's the right. Now it's still a little limited in feeling, but it's more similar to the other side. Here's the left, here's the right. Okay? So again, you've got a concept there. So there you've got another method of using your active range of motion and pushing into it to improve your mobility outcomes. Now, the third step of this would be to add some exercise, particularly resistance training exercise, to this equation. So now that I've done those two mobility exercises, going off and doing some resistance training exercise using the same concepts or being mindful of the same concepts. So what is that? Respecting your active range of motion, working with your body in your resistance training exercises. So, you know, knowing that I had a left hip flexion deficit on the left, I'm not going to go down and do bottom squats. I'm going to do squats that sort of sit within an active range, all right, that I can control, and I can feel my control in that. That's how I would do that. Again, with the front view, I'm coming down to a point where I have control, and control becomes one of the keys to my resistance training workout. Okay, so that would be how you do that. If you then take your muscles and you challenge them and put them under some heavy loads, right? And they have to work. Now this can be hard at home, so it's not always, I'm not talking about the home scenario now because not a lot of people have equipment that does that. But if you were to do that and be able to challenge your muscles, this idea of active range of motion, increasing mobility, and then challenge coming into that, it's like amplifying your body's control responses. And so the result of that is improved physical performance or movement. Again, mobility. So, in summary, a different way or an alternative way of looking at mobility from the current suggestions of stretching, rolling, rubbing, or moving, an alternative to that is working with your active range of motion, putting yourself into a position where you're pushing into the limited active range of motion, right, versus pulling away from it. So that's a different method. And then exercising to improve your body's ability with the newfound mobility. All right. So I hope you found this hopeful. I hope you found this helpful. We'll be doing posts to help give you strategies to use at home over the next period of time while we're going through this situation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or reach out, and I'll be happy to direct you further on ways in which you can improve your mobility using techniques like this. And any feedback that you have would be most helpful. So again, wishing you and your families a continued healthful existence, staying fit, staying positive, and making the best of the situation that we have in front of us. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to reach out. Wishing you all the best. Take care.